Hey guys, this is your friend Dark Fox 3.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto closed his heart, the silent fox in his ultimate harem. Hinata, Sakura, Tenten, Tamari, Anko, Tsunade, Mei, Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Naruto was walking down the road till he realized he needed to start doing missions. As much as he hated the fact he had to do them for the villagers, but he needed the money. So, he walked into the Hokage's tower to gain the glare of the receptionist, but merely shrugged it off. He quickly went into the Hokage's room much to the old man's surprise at seeing him. He walked over to a small cabinet in the corner, and grabbed a random D-rank mission from the shelf, and brought it to the Hokage. The man nodded, and Naruto walked out still leaving the Hokage with a fish out of water jutsu active. The boy walked out, and looked at the mission. It said to go to the large farm on the outskirts of town, and pull the weeds out. The boy sighed at the knowledge that he had to do at least 20 of these stupid missions. Naruto walked to the farm, and knocked on the door. As the door opened, an old woman was revealed with a scowl. "How can I help you?" asked the woman with venom in her voice. "I'm here to pull the weeds. Not a chance, demon. You would probably poison our crops, or you might even taint the land making it stop growing things. I'm here for the mission you requested," wrote the boy with a stern glare upon his face. "And I said no. Get the hell out, you brat. I am here for my mission. I don't care," shouted the woman as she opened the door, and backhanded the blonde. The boy turned his head back, and glared daggers at the woman. He spat at her bare feet before walking around a corner. Once out of sight, he made several hand signs before transforming into a brown-haired boy who looked constantly tired. He then walked up to the door, and knocked on it to have an angry-looking old man answer the door, this time while shouting, "We said to leave us the hell alone, demon." Then when he saw Naruto disguised, he apologized, and led him out to the farm, and watched as he pulled the weeds. Several hours passed till Naruto finished the job. He got the family to stamp the folder as Th Boy Shushine to the Hokage, and threw it onto the table. The man looked at it with disgust before paying the young boy 10,000 ryo. The boy looked at the money, grabbed it, and then walked out. He was walking back to the broken hideout here he last saw Kyuubi. He arrived to see her awake, and tending to the now awake brown-haired little girl. She looked at Naruto with a face that hinted a little fear before Kyuubi started to rub her head, and told her he was a friend of hers. Her demeanor then changed to a happy face as she ran over to the boy, and hugged him. Naruto smiled at the girl who was less than a head smaller than he, before he felt sick to his stomach. He grimaced in pain, before clutching it. "Naru-kun, what's wrong?" shouted Kyuubi as she ran to his side. The boy started coughing viciously before turning over, and coughing blood out onto the grass. "The second vial?" asked the crimson-haired woman as Naruto nodded while still coughing up a storm of red. Instantly, the woman dashed to the base, and grabbed the vial with the number 2 on it, and ran out. She sat the boy up, and uncapped the container. She then poured it down the boy's throat as he tried his hardest to not cough. The boy drank it as he grimaced from the horrible taste. He coughed a little more, but this time red didn't fly from his mouth. After a minute he stopped coughing, and started to breathe properly. He looked up at the sad-faced fox to see her near tears. "Naru-kun, I think it's almost time," whispered the woman. The boy looked up at the woman and smiled before bringing up the board with 2 more days written on it. The kitsune smiled at him before smiling, bending over, and kissing him on the forehead. Okay, but only because you asked, Naru-kun, the woman whispered into his ear seductively as his eyes drooped shut, letting sleep take him once more. Naruto woke up as light beat upon his eyes. He opened them to see a redhead snuggled up to him. Today was the last day. No 12 hours he could touch her in this realm. All because of the stupid condition. He was brought out of his thoughts as he felt her grip tighten on him, and her face squint. She whimpered subtly as he snuggled closer to her, which seemed to relieve the girl as her face switched to a comforted one. He smiled at her, then wandered back to the events of the last few days. He had wanted to be with her as much as possible, so they had decided she would help him on his missions. Which as of now he had now 11 D-ranked missions under his belt thanks to his shadow clones. So he was now eligible for a C-rank mission if accompanied by a sensei who gave their recommendation. Naruto knew that tomorrow he would start training with Hana, but he still wanted to spend time with Q-chan. That's when a pair of rubies fluttered open, and stared lovingly into a pair of sapphires. The owners smiled at each other till, much begrudgingly, they got up to get ready for this evil day. Naruto quickly got up, and went over to the last vial on the table. He uncorked it, and swiftly drank it. He looked back at the fox with eyes of sadness. Oh come on Naru-kun, you know this would happen. This only means you need to get some more from her. I know, I just wanted to spend more time with you Q-chan. Asterisk. Break up love fest please. We need to get to work on training Alpha. Spoke Ice Fang as he approached the two. He's right dear, we need to train you some more. Give me an hour. I'm almost done with this seal. Wrote the boy as he went to a desk with an inkwell, a feather, a knife, and a scroll with many intricate designs swirling about. An hour passed quickly as Naruto looked at his creation with pride. With one thought flowing in his mind. Soon I can take my revenge. Hurry up, shouted an angry wolf as Naruto put the scroll down carefully, and sprinted out. When Naruto got to the two waiting creatures, he paled when he saw Kyuubi holding an all too familiar grin. Naru-kun, it's time to amp up the weight again, spoke Kyuubi in a bittersweet voice. At this Naruto started sweating bullets as he approached the crimson-haired beauty. The woman quickly wrapped her hands in a cloak of red chakra before putting the two on his chest, then each arm, and finally ending on both legs. Naruto lifted one leg, and fell over. How much now? Asterisk. Don't worry Alpha, we only doubled the weight. Spoke a certain beast with an excited bark. Damn you both. Asterisk. Naruto slowly recovered, and stood up somehow before walking over to hug Kyuubi once more. They hugged each other tightly before they let go. Okay, so you don't have to, but I think it helps enhance the feeling of this part. Start song falling inside the black skillet. The day went on without much happening before 11 hours passed. Standing on the fourth's head is a crying blonde being held by crimson-haired woman caressing his head, and speaking soothing words into his ear. Don't worry, you'll see me later. I just need to sleep for a while till I get back. Exactly. If only I didn't have to deal with this when you came out, then we could be together forever. Asterisk. But just think Naru-kun, if you didn't have to deal with the demonic urges you would die whenever I came out, spoke the woman as her body flickered for a second. I know, that's why I sent her a letter yesterday, wrote the still crying boy as Kyuubi's body began to flicker more often till it began to just fade. Just remember that I love you da, spoke the woman before she fully phased out of existence, leaving a boy howling on the floor. Song end. Naruto slowly stood after he recovered from his loss of a friend for a good while. He looked up to the sky in anguish as he didn't want his foxy friend to leave. He knew she had to lest he lost control of his urges. Those damn stupid demon urges. Why? Why did he or any Jinchuriki have to get them with this technique? Yes, he got demonic urges of the vampiric kind whenever his biju got pulled out of him. It was either turning slightly demonic to have a link with her when she was out, or to be on the floor dead with her free to roam. He obviously chose the former as he didn't want to die just yet. He looked back to the city he despised as he went back inside the forest. He got back to his base as he started to whittle wood in the shape of a woman. It took him quite a while till he had finished his already nearly finished full-sized sculpture of voluptuous woman due to the fact he took great care to etch every possible detail into the sculpture. He looked at his creation with a smile. Soon, very soon, went through his head as he let it rest against a wall. All he had to do now was get some paint, a blood seal, and lastly a certain type of chakra. He knew how to get the paint easily and he could create the blood seal even easier. It was just a matter of time till he got the chakra he needed. He walked into the forest, and gathered a multitude of colors varying from red to blue, black to white, and green to purple. He then went back to the base, and scribbled on a scroll to create a blood seal. He painted the wooden sculpture with red hair that fell to her waist. Two patched one on either side came in front of her hair in the shape of fangs, and a single stray tuft was tied to her right side by a green pin making it slightly thicker than the left. She had amethysts for eyes with small onyx gems for pupils. She also had a button nose accompanied by thin sharp eyebrows. Lastly, she wore a green dress over a white shirt. Naruto backed up from his painted sculpture, and smiled. Northwest he just had to wait till it dried, which would be a good several hours. He looked outside to see the moon nearing its peak, and so he decided now would be a good time to let sleep wash over him once more. The following morning he got up bright and early as Ice Fang was already up, and hunting for their breakfast. Naruto quickly checked to see if the paint was done drying to see it wasn't quite done, but it was close. The blonde sighed, and then turned to see Ice Fang dragging a juvenile deer in. After the two had eaten their fill they rushed out to go to the Inuzuka compound lest they feel the wrath of another woman. He hated how they all seemed to hit so hard. It was as if you were being hit in the head with an anvil, although that's only the weak ones. He never could piss off Kyuubi, or else she might seriously drop a mountain on his head. He shrugged it off as he arrived at the building that Hana had described to him. He rang the doorbell on the old-looking house. A creak could be heard as an older woman with short spiky black hair similar to Naruto's own hair, two red fangs on either cheek, and black vertical slits for eyes. She smiled at him with a feral grin. "You must be Naruto," stated the woman as she looked at him closely, losing her smile as it was replaced with a curious look. The boy merely nodded in response to the woman as she led him into the house, and told him to wait as Hana was in a meeting for a bachelor. A few minutes later screaming could be heard, followed by the sound of glass shattering and objects being thrown. Moments after the sound, a shinobi within glasses was sprinting out of the house as fast as he could as an angry-looking Hana dashed out with a tick mark on her head. "Get back here, you damn pervert, and take what's coming to you!" shouted Hana as she stopped just in front of her house. "Hana, Naruto is waiting for training in the living room," shouted Hana's mother as the girl had a surprised look on her face. She suddenly heard barking, and turned around to see her dog playing with Ice Fang. She smiled, then remembered Naruto, and walked back into the house. She got in the house to see a calm-looking boy staring at her. "Hi Naruto-san." "Hello Hana-san," wrote the boy much to Hana's surprise, but she didn't pride you to knowing how she, and most other people felt about it. How are you doing? Fine. Can we start training? Asterisk. Excited are we? No, I merely wish to finish the training to take on more missions, wrote the boy as Hannah was slightly angered that she didn't get the reaction she hoped for from her teasing. Okay, let's get to work then, spoke Hannah, and with that the day went on quickly as Naruto did the chakra exercises shown to him. She was surprised he knew them, and could already do them. So she started to teach him some basic tracking methods. After the day of 4-hour training was over, Naruto left, and took Ice Fang with him, who was very happy at meeting his friend once more over the many years. When they got home, Naruto looked at the paint to see it dried. He smirked as he put the blood seal on the abdomen of the wooden sculpture. He made several hand seals, and then passed out. He woke up with several different colored chakras in front of him. He saw light blue, dark blue, and finally red. He stared at the three intently till he grabbed the dark blue one, and closed his eyes. He awoke back in the regular world with one hand covered in dark blue. He quickly drew blood on his other hand, and swiped it across the seal before putting his chakra-covered hand onto the blood. The seal glowed red before it faded. He smiled, then grabbed the seal he made yesterday, and put it over the bloodied scroll. He took a step back, and smiled. The wooden sculpture seemed to become less like wood, and more like a real woman. Suddenly the woman fluttered her eyes open. "Where am I?" asked the woman. "Welcome home, Mom," wrote the boy before wrapping his mother in a tight hug. "Who are you?" asked the red-headed woman who the blonde was hugging just as Ice Fang walked up to see the two. "Alpha, who is she?" asked the beast as Naruto let go of his mother, and looked at the wolf. "This is my mother Kushina. Mom, this is my friend Ice Fang," wrote the boy as he passed slightly, earning a chuckle from the sailor-mouthed wolf. "Son. When did I ever have a son?" asked the woman, instantly breaking the boy's heart. "Mom, it's me, Naruto. You know yours and the fourth son." Asterisk. "The fourth, as in Minato?" asked Kushina, earning a nod from the boy and dog. "Why would I have had a son with that asshole?" asked the woman, earning a single grin at the language and a confused blonde. "But you're my mother. Remember you died when Q-chan attacked the village." Asterisk. "Q-chan? You mean Kyuubi?" "No, he's talking about some nine-tailed fox," spoke Ice Fang sarcastically, earning a tick mark on Kushina's forehead. "When did Kyuubi attack, and why? She would never do that." "Wait, where am I?" asked the woman, earning two face faults due to just now realizing she didn't know where she was. "Do you not remember having a child, Mom?" Asterisk. "No, I never would have had a child with that bastard, and I definitely haven't done the deed yet," spoke the redhead shamelessly. "I think something's wrong," spoke the young boy in his head. "I know smell ink shit on her, active ink." "What do you mean, Ice Fang?" Single quote. "Fine, we'll finish this later." Naruto, that name sounds familiar, spoke the redhead to herself. "Yeah, you named me after a fishcake, Mom." Asterisk. "Hey, don't get sassy with me, kid. Although, that does sound like something I would do," spoke the red-headed woman as she struck a thinking pose. "I think we'll need Kyuubi in order to see the seal." "Well, you'll need to wait until she wakes up, Alpha." "I know," thought the boy as he looked at Ice Fang. "I still don't believe you, boy," spoke Naruto's mom as she came out of her thoughts. "It's fine, just stay with Ice Fang until Kyuubi wakes up." Asterisk. "What do I mean? I can just talk with her. Give me a minute," spoke Kushina as she sat down to meditate. "You won't get. Why can't I talk to Kyuubi?" asked the woman in worry. "Because she is inside of me," wrote the boy as he lifted his shirt, and channeled chakra through his body, making the seal on his abdomen. "So you might be telling the truth then, but how am I alive? I revived you with the seal on your abdomen, wrote the boy as he placed his hand on her shoulder, and pushed his chakra into her. Then the seals glowed through her shirt to reveal his words of truth. So there is some truth to your words. All right then, I'll listen to you for now, but I warn you now, you still tread on thin ice. As long as I have the chance, wrote the boy as he began to walk away. Where are you going, Naruto-san? He's got training with Hana the shithead. Oh, okay, spoke the redhead as the blonde just walked without looking back. He was still heartbroken over his mother not knowing who he was, but he was happy to at least see her. So with a sigh he trudged on to the Inuzuka compound with a purpose to train, and to find Ayame. Naruto quickly arrived at the compound as he nearly sprinted there, not from excitement, but rather to escape the stares of the public. Their stares were slowly driving him to madness. He was nearing his breaking point once more, and he hadn't even been in the city for a full year. The only thing keeping him sane is the thought that it was all a mere test. Yes, a test to see if he had what it took to fulfill his plan, and he knew he would. Whether it took a day, a week, or a year, all depended on when she would come back. He only needed to wait until she got over their deaths, whether by time, or from a push. He was brought out of his musings when the large building appeared in front of him. He walked up, and knocked to have it opened by Hana. She smiled at him, before fully opening the door. All right, Naruto-kun, you ready for your first real mission? Asked the brunette as she took a step out, and closed the door behind her. What do you mean by a real mission? I've done those poor excuses of D ranks. Asterisk. Well, you're in luck, cause we're going to be doing your first C rank mission. Here's the details. Be at the gate in an hour, spoke the woman right before she handed him a folder, and then disappeared back inside. The boy looked inside the folder to see it was a joint operation between him, Hana, and Team 8. The mission was to escort a man back home in Wave Country, and guard him as he was building the bridge. He smiled at finally having a chance to do an actual mission, and to top it off he would be able to see Tsunami again. Hey Ice Fang, I'm going to be gone for about 2 weeks, inform mom of it, and make sure she stays hidden, Yane. Naruto was waiting at the gate for the other team, his teacher, and for their client, still wondering who he is as he didn't feel like reading who the client was, and merely skimmed the contents of the folder. The young boy had thoughts racing through his little 12-year-old brain at enormous speeds. The boy kept on thinking of where Ayame was as he still hadn't seen her since the accident with the fire. The boy looked up, and felt his heart drop when he thought next of Kyubi. He still missed her, even though he knew in a day or two she would wake up. Then he could talk to her to his heart's content. The boy was suddenly brought out of his musings at the sound of yelling. Oh, come on Shino, it was just a joke, shouted a boy with a dog on his head. A can of bug spray is no joke, spoke the boy with the color of his shirt covering his lower face in a serious tone. As he turned his head away from Kiba. Hinata-chan, help me out here, shouted the feral boy in exasperation. I told you not to wave the empty can around Shino, spoke Hinata shyly, but without stuttering. Oh, come on, not you too. All I did was say he needed to pack a little for the trip, and it was a joke, shouted the boy once more. That was a horrible joke then. I mean, come on, you could have at least used a full can, shouted Hana, berating him on his joke, along with her dog barking its approval. Hana-chan, how can you encourage your brother? Shouted a slightly angry Kurenai. No one got hurt, so it's all good. Oh, hi Naruto-kun, shouted Hana as the group walked over to the boy with Kiba, and Shin still arguing, Well, mostly Kiba, as Shino was ignoring him. Naruto-san, where is the bridge builder? Asked Kurenai as she walked over to the boy. I don't know, wrote the boy as Kurenai nodded, already informed of the talking or lack of talking situation from her discussion with Hana. Flashback. 2 days ago. Hey Kurenai-chan, Anko-chan, and Yugao-chan, yelled the Inuzuka heiress as she ran at her friends with a look of urgency on her face, and in her tone of voice. What's up, Hana-chan? Asked Anko out of worry as she also seemed to pick up on the blatant display of urgency. Naruto-kun isn't talking. What do you mean he was talking to us just yesterday? Spoke Yugao with a confused expression on her face. I mean he isn't talking, he's using a chalkboard to communicate. Hana stated, this time a little quieter as not to alert someone else. Why? Asked Kurenai in a shocked tone. I think it has something to do with the place that got burned down 3 days ago, spoke Hana in a hushed tone of voice as the other three's eyes widened in realization. Ayame and Tuki, Anko, Kurenai, and Yugao spoke in unison in thought to give a laugh at what just took place. Yeah, so what do we do? Asked Hana a little louder than before. We should leave him be for now, but I do have one question, spoke Yugao in a deadly serious tone, leaving the other three on edge. What? Asked the other three females in unison once more, not laughing. Why are we talking in unison? Spoke the girl, chuckling slightly as the other three stared at her with deadpanned expression before joining Yugao in the giggling session. Flashback end. So you six are my guards? Asked an old man who sounded familiar to the blonde-haired boy. Yes, client-san, we are your escorts, spoke Kurenai calmly. Why are there kids guarding me? They all look so weak. Especially that blonde one in the black. The old man said the last part with a little playfulness in it. Weak. I don't think you should be right behind Naruto's client. Hi Ice Fang, spoke the old man with a bit of fear in his voice as he stared at the beast, and took several steps back. What are you doing here? Shouted the boy telepathically to his wolf. Don't worry, your mom understands the situation, and I was just coming to see you off, spoke the beat mentally without swearing once somehow. Somewhere else, a redhead was walking down a dark tunnel when she sneezed suddenly. Damn, someone forgot to swear like usual, the angry woman shouted. I doubt anyone or thing has a tongue as foul as you to Yuya, spoke a rather barrel-like man with a baby-like face, and 3 orange strips of hair on his nearly bald head. Shut your pie hole, Jirobo, I know there's someone else out there who knows how to speak properly, shouted the redhead angrily as the man just gave her a deadpanned expression. Before he just waved her off, and picked up a brown cloak. Back in Konoha, how have you been, Naruto my boy? Spoke the man with a large grin on his face. Good, and I think we should start getting you home. Lest you want to anger your daughter again, wrote the young boy as the man just started to sweat bullets. Yeah, I think you're right, let's go. And Naruto, why aren't you talking? Personal things, old man Taz. Asterisk. Okay, spoke the man as he wasn't the only one to see the written phrase, and he among others chose not to stick their noses any further in his business. They got the hint that he would tell them when he was ready, and he wasn't, yet. The rest of the journey was walked in silence aside from the bridge builder talking to Naruto, and the boy scribbling responses at inhuman speeds. The group of 7 walked for about 2 hours on the road before they all suddenly stopped. The road in front of them had several burn marks indicating a fire hit the area. Whether it was a fire jutsu or just an idiot attempting a forest fire was unknown, but that wasn't what made them stop, and instantly go tense. The thing that did was the blood that littered the road. There was a lot of it, and it was fresh. The 6 ninjas instantly got into a rectangle formation with Shino and Kiba at the back, Naruto and Hinata on either side of Tazuna, and Hana and Kurenai in the front. We move forward quickly, spoke Kurenai calmly as she eyed the forest cautiously before the 7 people broke into a jog instead of their slow walk. They stopped jogging after about 15 minutes of nothing happening, but they were still just as alert. Ice Fang, you hear me? Asked the boy in his head. Single quote dot 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 single quote. Single quote dot 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 single quote. Single quote dot 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 single quote. Damn, he's blocking me out, shouted the boy mentally as the group continued on without stopping. After 20 more minutes, the group came to a clearing in the forest, much like the bloodied battlefield they had been on not an hour before. This had only 2 real differences though. Instead of just blood on the ground without corpses or anything, there were 4 bodies. 1 man, 2 teenagers, and 1 feminine-looking kid the Genin's age. The horrifying part though was that the 4 bodies were missing their heads, and were hanging from the trees by a rope attached to their feet. The second difference was the smell. This place reeked of death, and evil, unlike the last battle-scarred path they had encountered. This one had the horrific smell looming over the dirt road just like the bodies the smell accompanied. Then out of nowhere a chilling wind blew through the road. The shinobi could have sworn they heard a whisper say, "Join us," in a low hush voice that once more sent a chill down the spine. It was as if the Shinigami himself had graced the field of battle, and that gust of wind was the messenger saying he had arrived. 3 out of the 4 genin turned, and puked in a nearby bush. Naruto stood still, and stared at the 4 before looking at the Jonin to see their reaction to the scene before them. The Jonin were standing there scared at the sight of it before turning to Tazuna. "Why are there missing nins in our way?" asked Hana calmly as Kurenai was over with the 3 genin trying to help them cope. I don't know, spoke the scared man as he still had his eyes glued at the hanging corpses. While the 2 of them were arguing, however, Naruto saw several figures in the distance. Their bodies were barely visible due to the fog that had rolled in, but Naruto saw them nonetheless. The 3 figures wore masks, and had different colored cloaks on. The first of the 3 wore a dark crimson cloak and a Hanya mask. The second wore a brown cloak with a mask of a boar on its face, and the last figure wore a spider's mask with a black cloak. Naruto stared at them before they slowly phased out of existence as if they were never there to begin with, but they didn't take the presence of the god of death with them. Naruto smiled as he knew they were real, and were waiting for him, and his team to get to the bridge to confront them. "Okay guy, because Mr. Bridge Builder here is saying he doesn't know who those ninjas were, it's up to you guys to decide if we move on or not. Just know from this point on our word is law." "Okay?" asked the black-haired Jonin. Sensei why are the people moving?" asked Hinata as her eyes were wide with fear. "It's just the wind," spoke Hana before she turned, and saw that it wasn't the wind. The 4 figures were on the ground, and walking towards the group with kunais in either hand. The group suddenly stopped, and took battle-ready stances as they faced the group of 7, headless. "Wah, what's going on?" shouted Kiba in fear as the pup on top his head whimpered in fear. "Keep calm, and protect Tazuna," shouted Hana as the 4 genin put their backs up against the old man who was now scared of what was going on. He was about ready to piss his pants. The 4 corpses charged the 2 jonin in a heated fight. Hana jumped in front accompanied by her dog while Kurenai stayed behind flying through and seals. "String bean binding illusion," Kurenai shouted as nothing happened. She stared wide-eyed, and then realized the problem. They couldn't hear or see the jutsu, so they were immune to her genjutsus. Hana realized it a moment after, and they both knew they were in trouble. "All of you get out of here!" shouted Hana as she turned back, and engaged in a battle of taijutsu with the two smaller teens. Her dog and Kurenai were fighting the large man and the girl. The genin from Team 8 were about to till Naruto looked them in the eye. His eyes telling them all they needed to know. "Don't you dare attempt to leave your friends behind." The genin nodded, and got into a fighting stance. Akamaru jumped off of Kiba's head, Shino let the bugs within his body flood out, Hinata activated her Byakugan, and Naruto got into a low stance. The Jonin didn't notice that the genin hadn't left, so they didn't speak at all except for an occasional jutsu every now and then. Naruto nodded at his three comrades before they charged. Naruto and Kiba went to help Hana, while Shino and Hinata went to help Kurenai. Naruto was throwing punches and kicks wildly, but with precision and strength. But every time he let a fist or foot fly, it was blocked, and then countered. Every time that Naruto's headless opponent sent him a blow, he blocked it too. They were in stalemate. Why are there B blue strings A attached to the B bodies? Asked Hinata suddenly from across the field, and it clicked in Naruto's head. He noticed thin lines of blue attached to the bodies of the people. Instantly, the boy dodged another punch before rolling underneath the teen he was fighting. He quickly drew a kunai from his pouch, and struck the string, but to no avail as it didn't break. He quickly rolled out of the way of another heel that would have crushed his skull as it slightly dented the ground where Naruto once sat. The boy had to think quick. He knew what he had to do, just not how to do it. Then it hit him, literally, as he received a hit to the face from a chakra-covered fist. He landed near a tree, and spit out some blood before he grabbed another kunai from his pouch, and stood once more. Naruto started pumping chakra into the kunai before it glowed a slight blue as it barely could hold any chakra, but it was enough. The boy smirked before vanishing in a blur of speed, and cutting all the wires attached to the corpses. Instantly, the bodies dropped down lifeless like they were. Everyone looked at Naruto weird as they hadn't figured out how he actually made them suddenly stop except the Jonin. They stopped, because they were tired. "What did you do?" asked Kiba with a surprised yet happy expression on his face. "They were puppets." The boy quickly wrote as he pulled a piece of chalk in his chalkboard of thin air. "Puppets?" asked Hinata, still staring at the bodies in a battle-ready state in case they tried to stand again. "They were controlled, by chakra strings," spoke Hana while huffing as she was still exhausted. "We should get moving," spoke Kurenai, also huffing. "Okay, you all can stay at my place, follow me," shouted Tazuna as if he wasn't just in a life or death situation and didn't have a small wet spot on the crotch area of his pants. After a few hours they arrived at a dock where they ferried a boat across the large, fog-covered river. A few minutes later, and the group was in the town. It was very run down, and gave off the alarm of danger. As if just being here could make you lose hope, and it disheartened the genin minus Naruto as he was used to this already. A few more minutes, and the group was at Tazuna's house. They entered into the house that was strangely devoid of life. "Tsunami. Inari. Where are you guys?" shouted Tazuna into the empty house. The man flipped the light on, and saw a note on the table. It read out, "To get groceries, took Inari with me." The man sighed in relief. "Make yourselves at home," spoke the man as he turned to the group. Had been 15 minutes since the group had arrived in the house. They turned the lights on, and had been showed each of their rooms by Tazuna. But this did nothing to dismiss their growing unease. This unease had nothing to do with the house, the fact that Tsunami and Inari still weren't home, or even the feeling from the city. The cause of the sudden discomfort was the knock on the door 5 minutes ago. Flashback. A sudden harsh knock could be heard from the front of the house. Immediately everyone was on edge as Hana and Kurenai had immediately drawn a kunai. The genin each got into defensive stances themselves with Hinata activating the Byakugan. "What's on the other side, Hinata-san?" asked Hana in a low, but deadly serious tone. Nothing," trailed off the Hyuga in confusion plastered on every ninja's face as even civilians had chakra, albeit a small amount, but some nonetheless. Hana looked at Kurenai, who merely nodded as they slowly encroached upon the door. Hana looked at the genin once more to see them still in their respective stances. The young brunette turned, and gripped the handle of the door. She slowly opened it to show nothing on the other side, aside from a basket of medical herbs, and a note. Hana swiftly grabbed the basket, and shut the door, bringing it inside. Hana looked at the paper with horror on her face. "What's on the note, Hana-chan?" asked Kurenai with a slight edge of fear as Hana took a quick gulp, and slowly began to read once more, before passing it around. "Naruto, read it once more. The white snake is hunting you, best not keep us waiting." "Who is the white snake, sensei?" asked Kiba with a slight fearful edge to his voice, but still maintained his arrogant voice somehow. "Kurenai-chan, do you think it really is him?" asked Hana seriously. "Hana, we need to send this note to the third," stated Kurenai as she began to think on how to send the note to the third. "I can bring it to Konoha safely," wrote the boy as he looked at the two older women. "How can we send a child though? What if he gets hurt again? I don't think I could deal with my Naruto-kun getting wait, what the hell? Keep it a student-teacher relationship." Hana thought the woman as the other female was in deep thought as well, only more serious thoughts. "How can you get it back to Konoha?" asked Kurenai skeptically. "Ice Fang, come here," thought Naruto. "Why, Alpha? I need you to bring something to him," thought the boy as he spat the word with venom. "I'm on it, Alpha, be there in a day. Ice Fang will be here in a day to take it back," wrote the boy as Kurenai sighed with relief that he didn't suggest he would go. She couldn't deal with the boy breaking any more than he already had. "Okay kids, we need to start training to give any of us a chance at survival," spoke Kurenai as she started to walk out of the house accompanied by Hana. Instantly, the genin followed in step. Hana sent Naruto a "follow me" look as she walked into the nearby forest as Hana walked into a different part. "Kurenai, where are Naruto-kun and Hana going?" asked Hinata meekly. "They're just training, and when become Naruto-kun?" asked Kurenai, teasing her surrogate sister. Instantly Hinata's face lit up like an apple, albeit a rather cute one. Kurenai just laughed at the sight of this as the brunette started to sputter incoherently. "Elsewhere. What are we going to do now, sensei?" "We are going to start walking on water," shouted Hana while laughing at her own attempt to make it running, while only getting a deadpan look in return. "Damn blondes not being able to laugh," huffed right before Naruto weaved hand signs, and created a giant lake before walking on it. The boy turned around to see a wide-eyed Hana staring at him in disbelief. "Naruto, do you realize how much of an affinity you have for water?" asked the teacher while the boy merely nodded. "Okay, how about we work on elemental chakra then?" asked the woman once more as the boy's dull blue eyes shined bright for a mere moment before returned to the lustreless sapphires. Hana quickly whipped a piece of paper out. "So, this is a piece of chakra paper. It reacts when you pump chakra into it. If it's water, it gets soaked, earth turns it to dust, wind cuts it, fire lights it ablaze, and lightning crinkles it. Oh, if you happen to have a Kekkei Genkei, it will do something else entirely. Now I'll show you mine first. The woman explained as she pumped chakra into the paper. The piece of paper quickly got soaked on one half as the other started to burn, reflecting her personality perfectly. Naruto nodded as she handed him a piece of paper. The boy pumped his chakra into the paper. It split into 4 pieces. One piece got shredded into thousands of smaller pieces that continued on and on till the paper didn't even exist anymore. The second piece slowly turned to brown as the edges turned to dust, slowly coming to the center. The third piece turned into a puddle with the piece of paper in the center of it. The last piece started to split like the first, but stopped cutting the paper as another puddle appeared around this piece. The puddle rose, and started to dance around like a tornado, with the small pieces of paper twirling inside the mini whirlpool that slowly sunk into the floor. "You never cease to surprise me, Naruto-kun," stated Hana as she shook her head with a smile on her face. "You have a weak affinity for earth, an affinity for water, the likes of the second Hokage, a wind affinity beyond my imagination, and a Kekkei Genkei of some sort," mused the woman. "It's called whirlpool style. Asterisk. Okay, well then let's get started on manipulation. I can easily manipulate water and wind, however I don't know how to do earth. Asterisk. Well, I've never seen it, but the Hokage and Jiraiya should know. How about we try turning a leaf to dust though?" suggested the brunette as Naruto nodded, and went to work. Naruto quickly grabbed a leaf, and began to pump chakra into it, struggling to get it to turn to dust. He looked over his shoulder to see Hana wasn't around, so he quickly formed his hands in a cross shape. Instantly 36 Narutos poofed into existence, and grabbed a leaf. They worked for an hour before Naruto felt a chill down his neck. He looked around to see that a familiar feeling fog had rolled in. He looked around till he saw the shadow of 4 figures in the distance slowly approaching. Naruto tensed as they neared. Then the 4 showed their faces, and to Naruto's fear it was 5 masked figures. Each cloaked in separate colors. Naruto looked at the new figure who had 2 masks adorning his 2 heads, nothing wrong there. The 2 new masks were that of an Oni with a single horn coming from the top of their heads. Naruto stared at the group as he quickly backed up. "Calm down, boy. Orochimaru-sama merely wants to meet you," spoke the boar-masked man with a polite tone. "Yeah, you shithead." Get the feminine voice, although Naruto saw Ice Fang looming above her for some odd reason. "To Yuya. Woman shouldn't talk like that," spoke the boar man once more. "Shut up," shouted the woman once more. "Come quietly, and we won't harm you too much," spoke the arachnid masked male. Naruto stared at them, and raised a single finger in response. "Little kids shouldn't do that," spoke the boar with a mellow tone. "Damn, I like this Gaki," shouted the Hanya masked one. "Let's just get him to Orochimaru-sama," spoke one of the Oni heads. Naruto stared intensely at them before flipping through signs. "Whirlpool style. Howling torrent," whispered the boy as he positioned his hand like that of a grand fireball, but instead of fire, water sprinted from his mouth at an insane speed, howling like a wolf at night, alerting anyone in at least a 6-mile radius. The 4 figures tried to dodge the spray of water, but the spider one wasn't fast enough. Red flew through the air as the both of the man's legs were both blown off of him, leaving him to bleed to death. The others were frightened slightly by the display of power before they remembered what he would do to them if they failed this mission. The blonde, seeing the 3-4 figures hesitate, gave him just enough time to act. He instantly dashed, capitalizing on the nearest one, the Oni one. Naruto ran right at him, and arrived at the two-headed freak right after he regained his bearings. Naruto and the two-headed freak then began a bout of taijutsu. As the two were throwing punches back and forth matching each other blow for blow, the other two masked people were flipping through signs. The Hanya masked one finally finished, and pulled a flute out of her pocket. She lifted her mask slightly, and began to play the flute, causing three enormous figures to slowly phase into existence. As soon as they fully phased into this plane, they charged the boy, who leapt back to dodge the figures. Instantly, a head popped out the side of his neck. "Hey there. How you doin', ah?" shouted the Oni masked figure attached to him as it slowly started to burn. After a few seconds, the person fell limp before blowing away with the light wind, forming a light black haze. "You!" shouted the other Oni as it charged Naruto. The other two looked in horror before the boar man weaved hand signs together and shouted, "Earth style! Earth prison of magnificent nothingness!" Encasing the boy in stone. The boar then placed his hands on the rock as the color blue started to seep into his hands. Naruto looked around as he felt slightly weaker with each passing second before deciding what to do. He quickly weaved a few signs together before whispering, "Earth style," hiding like a mole, as he suddenly began to dig not underground, but rather straight through the walls. Yep, definitely how a mole hides. As soon as the boy exited the dome, three worm-like things made entirely of spiritual energy charged at him. He quickly dived to the right, meeting the Oni one, who swung at him with a kunai in hand. Naruto attempted to dodge it, but it found a home in the flesh of his side as Naruto rolled past the Oni, huffing slightly. Naruto looked up to see the boar and Oni masked ones charging him again, while the Hanya masked one was playing her flute still. Naruto leapt back while flipping through several signs before biting his thumb, and slamming it on the ground, whispering, "Summoning jutsu." In front of Naruto appeared two giant wolves half the size of the already tall trees. One wolf was colored crimson while the other was black as the night. They both had yellow eyes that screamed death. The wolves looked around for a mere second to see the two charging figures. They looked back to see Naruto nod before they charged at the other figures. The black wolf met the boar man, and instantly lunged at him, bowling him over as they rolled a little. The large man then threw the black one off before facing the wolf again to see a smirk on its face. The man turned around just as he heard, "Gaily Ido," before his body was bisected in two. Meanwhile, the crimson wolf was swiping crazily at the Oni, who was trying desperately to dodge as the first hit he took when he blocked because his skin to turn black in the wound's immediate vicinity. "Just stop moving, you idiot, and I can end you sooner," shouted the wolf. Before he leapt back slightly, and somehow went through hand signs with his paws. "Yep, definitely possible, just like Toad's, lightning style, static mayhem," shouted the crimson-pelted creature as electricity started to flare wildly from his mouth while Naruto was flipping through his own signs. "Water style. Water dragon jutsu," whispered the boy as it lunged straight into the electricity, and slammed into the Oni figure. The man started to spasm violently before he just laid on the floor smoking like crazy. The other woman looked around in fear as she saw the dragon, and ran away from the boy. Naruto looked around for the girl, and when he couldn't find her, he collapsed with exhaustion. The young blonde slowly started to stir from his exhaustion to see darkness dimly illuminated by a white orb in the sky. He watched it pass overhead slowly for several seconds before he moved. He sat up slowly as he looked around to see the two wolves lying around them with their ears up high as if they were alert. "Long time no see, Naruto-sama," spoke the crimson female as she opened her eyes that focused on the boy. The boy nodded before he heard rustling in the nearby bushes. He looked at them to see a boy walk into the clearing with a downcast look plastered onto his face. The boy looked up to see the blonde ninja with his two wolves. Instantly, the boy's face lit up at the sight of Naruto. "Naruto-Nisan!" shouted the boy as he dashed towards the ninja, and tackled him in a hug. The boy looked up to see Naruto smile at him with a wide grin, right before he poofed out of existence. "Hey, that's not fair!" the boy shouted as he turned to see a grinning Naruto running away. The boy instantly ran after him with a grin the same size of his brother figure. The young boy then followed him out of the forest to see Naruto finally walk into the house as he waved at him. Inari laughed before he got to the door, and attempted to open. Till he figured out Naruto was holding the door on the other side. Inari huffed before he realized what he had to do. He carefully tiptoed to an open window to see no one watching it. Then he jumped through it shouting, "Hi!" A woman with blue hair turned just in time to catch a flying boy as she fell on her back. The ninja however tensed slightly till they saw Tsunami start to giggle slightly. "Inari, what have I told you about jumping through windows?" shouted Tsunami to the boy as she still continued to giggle a little bit. "But Ka-san, you've only told Ni-san not to do it," spoke the young boy. "If I tell him then it applies to everyone, including you," spoke Tsunami as she started to tickle the young boy, earning a tender look from all the people around at the show of their bond. "San, please, he, stop," stuttered out the young boy as he continued to laugh while being tickled. Naruto's face softened at the display slightly, which went unnoticed as he saw them from the back of the room. The two stopped after a few minutes with a young boy still grasping for air from the intense tickle attack he had gotten. "So Sochi, what is going on right now?" asked the young woman, eliciting several surprised looks from the ninja to find out Tsunami was the young blonde's mother. "It has had its up and downs, Yuka-san," right the young boy quickly. "You know, same old, just picking up random orphans from the street. Spending a few years with them, then watching them disappear from sight. You know the usual," spoke the woman sweetly, very sweetly, earning a sheepish look from the ninja. "Sorry, had to go back to my traveling plan before things started to get out of hand with them. What have I missed since I was last here? Just Gato finally taking over," spoke the brunette calmly as she served the blonde his reheated dinner. The young boy ate, reminiscing in old times with his mother before Hana finally interrupted. "Yeah, so Inari just started running when he started Tsunami before being interrupted. Are you the boy's real mother?" asked Hana simply as she gave the woman a stern glare. "No, I was not his biological. Merely a caretaker of sorts." Now Inari started running before he tripped on a rock, and started to roll down the hill before he rolled into a giant puddle, spoke the woman, turning from Hana to the young blonde once more as they continued to reminisce. However, the other ninja looked at the woman with different perspectives. "I'm glad she raised him to be a little kind-hearted. Who knows what could have happened if he hadn't had her," thought Kurenai. "Man, she's hot, but she's Naruto's Ka-san," thought Kiba while looking at the woman. My insects still haven't located anything of importance," thought Shino, tuning the whole thing out. "He's so cute when he is smiling," thought Hinata with a little drool leaving the corner of her mouth. "Why do I feel jealous of this woman? I mean, she only knows more than me about Naruto. Damn it, why am thinking like this?" thought Hana as the individuals slowly started to call it a night one by one. The young blonde ninja finally got into bed, and instantly let sleep take him. The blonde opened his eyes to see his mindscape that had a forest similar to the one behind the Hokage monument with a nice waterfall falling off a nearby cliff. The boy looked around till he saw a sleeping figure under a large tree. The boy walked over to the beautiful sleeping redhead, and admired her face that seemed so at peace with the current world. He continued to smile while looking at her with only one thought in his mind. 3 days, just 3 more days till we can talk again, Q-chan. The boy thought as he sat next to her. He wrapped an arm around her to see the figure Nine Tails snuggle into his shoulder, making him show a loving smile as he gently caressed her face and head. He sat there for a few hours talking about what has happened back in the real world, making him reflect on the few good times he had encountered in life. A few being with his surrogate mother Tsunami, some with his Q-chan, and the rare occasion he met his blood supplier, An. I refuse to say who this is unless you somehow manage to guess it. He sat there for hours on end in silence, watching clouds float by before he felt a tug. Then a stronger one signaling someone was trying to wake him up. He looked at Kyuubi one last time before planting a kiss on her forehead, then he closed his eyes. When he opened them, he was greeted with an angry Hana walking in with a bucket filled to the brim with ice-cold water fresh from the sea. "Damn, you couldn't sleep for a few more seconds," shouted Hana angrily. "Not a chance." I still have the water, I wonder," trailed off the brunette before she disappeared from whence she came. Moments later, howling could be heard. "Damn you, sis. I'll kill you for this," shouted Kiba as Hana ran by the boy's door, followed by one Kiba in his boxers that had pictures of steak on it. He was chasing his sister with an angry look on his face as he held a kunai in his hand. Naruto shook his head before he got up, and got dressed into his attire that consisted of his fox face mask, a black shirt with a small trim of orange on the sides, and black pants. He then put on blue shinobi sandals before walking out of his room to smell the scent of bacon and eggs downstairs as it slowly wafted upstairs. The boy quickly appeared downstairs, surprising one brunette, and making one little kid excited to see his brother again. He quickly hugged his surrogate mother before he heard rustling behind him. He turned to look at it to see nothing in where it originally came from. He squinted his eyes before Kurenai and her team minus Kiba walked down the stairs. The boy relaxed himself just as Tsunami started to set the table and dish the food out. The morning went by quick with talk of more training, but that the two teams would take 2-hour guard shifts of Old Man Taz. They quickly agreed that Hana and Naruto would guard Tazuna for 2 hours twice, as well as Kurenai's team, due to the minimal amount of light which only allowed about 8 hours of good light this time of the year. The two teams quickly headed in their respective directions, with Tazuna following Hana and Naruto. Naruto arrived at the bridge to see all the material needed nearby with only a few workers. "What the hell do you mean they quit?" shouted Tazuna in anger. "Just like I said. They are afraid of Gato, and don't want their family to get hurt," spoke a man slightly larger than Tazuna with a thick burly brown beard, dark brown hair, and brown eyes matching his hair, making his face look like someone just scribbled the color brown on him, because they were too lazy to think of a different combination of colors. Naruto quickly walked up to Tazuna with his whiteboard in hand. "I can get you some workers. How many do you need to finish by the end of the week?" At least 3 dozen or so. The problem is that I don't have the funding to hire that many, spoke the old man while looking at some papers. "I can help you," wrote the boy before he crossed his fingers, summoning 4 dozen clones, astonishing the old man. A few seconds later he started to direct them. The 2 hours passed relatively uneventful aside from a clone or two complaining, but what can you expect from a kid? The other team showed up on the dot, and the moment they took over Hana, and the real Naruto shushined to their training area, leaving the clones to help build the bridge. Okay, Naruto, you got some explaining to do about your damn bloodline. What two elements are they, because you seem to know what it is, stated Hana while sending an unbreakable glare at the young blonde. The two elements are wind and water, wrote the young boy, confusing the Inuzuka heiress. But don't wind and water chakra make the ice bloodline? Questioned Hana, still obviously confused. The ice release requires 3/4 of the used chakra to be wind, and the other quarter is water. Whereas the whirlpool bloodline requires the exact opposite, wrote the boy, eliciting another confused stare from Hana. So can you learn the ice bloodline too then? Asked the woman. Yes and no, because of how chakra works. In order to fuse two chakras evenly to make a mixed jutsu takes years if not decades, but in order to balance it perfectly to create a bloodline they were not born with would require a shinobi to have chakra control like that of Tsunade. On top of that, one would also require the ability to manipulate chakra at the level of a biju in order to shape it in the way the bloodline works. The reason we bloodline holders have the ability to use a specified bloodline is our chakra inherently comes in the exact shape and amount required by instinct, explained the young ninja, revealing his large amount of knowledge. So I could learn any bloodline I want? Hana asked, slightly surprised. Only if you could either figure out the necessary amount of chakra required to make the exact shape for the bloodline, or if someone who knows their own bloodline taught you how. Even with the last happening, it would still take several decades just to achieve, wrote the young boy as he started shaking his hand furiously. What's wrong, Naruto-kun? Asked the young woman with a slight amount of worry on her face. My hand hurts from writing too much, wrote the young boy, receiving not a sweat drop, but an anime face fall from Hana as the boy laughed silently at the display. Alright, all jokes aside, let's start some chakra control exercises, spoke the woman as she pulled out a handful of senbons. What are those for? Asterisk. You've heard of laying down on kunai, right? Well, how about we try that with senbon? Spoke Hana with a sadistic gleam in her eyes, and a matching smile that would make Enko proud. Elsewhere, a young purple pineapple-haired woman was eating dango before she felt a shiver go down her spine. Damn it, I'm the only one in this world allowed to be sadistic, shouted the woman as she suddenly stood up in the dango shop, getting sweat drops from every other customer in the shop. Back to Wave. Naruto was training hard for the next week as nothing eventful had happened except for the occasional feeling of someone or something watching him, yet every time he looked over his shoulder nothing stood there. It was as if he was being haunted by a phantom, and unfortunately Naruto hated ghosts of any sort, so he started to take precautions such as putting dozens of anti-ghost, anti-supernatural amulets around his neck. The young boy was on guard at the bridge once more as he couldn't drop the feeling of being stalked. Unlike other times, this had been looming over him for well over an hour, and showed no signs of leaving him anytime soon. A few more minutes passed till he felt as if he was surrounded. He looked around to see no difference, just the usual fog all around that wrapped around the city like a blanket. The boy continued to look around till he saw a group of silhouettes on the other side of the nearly completed bridge. They stood there staring in the boy's direction. Naruto froze before the figures suddenly disappeared like phantoms fleeing this plane of existence. Several hours passed when they finally finished the bridge, and surprisingly all of Gato's men had disappeared as soon as it was finished. Even more surprising, the fat rich man's men seemed to leave the people alone since the ninja got here for some strange reason. With the bridge finished, and night descending on our group of ninja, they decided to stay one last day, and leave in the morning. Morning came quick, and with it the ninja rose. However, during their early breakfast at Chizuna's house, a loud scream was heard near where the bridge was. Fearing the worst, the ninja stopped eating, and left abruptly in the direction of the bridge. When they got there, they were greeted with a slightly horrifying sight. On a pike in the center of the bridge was a man. However, this man had a long spear entering from where his privates would be, and exited the man's body at the neck. The man had a terrified expression glued to his bloodied face that had been mutilated, as one of the eyes were missing along with several teeth, fingers, and an ear. His hair was stained crimson in his own blood as he just stood there on the pole. This man was someone everyone in Wave had wanted dead. However, even the more radical of the Wave citizens wouldn't have done this, even if the man in question was Gato. The crowd all had the same feeling wash over them, relief and fear at the image presented before them. Naruto walked up to the body before he ripped the pike from the ground, and slowly dragged it to the edge. He then dropped the still impaled body down into the river that moved rather slowly as it carried the hated man out to sea. Naruto during the whole event had an unreadable face, but he was slightly disturbed by the turn of events. He had planned to switch with a clone on the way home, and kill the evil businessman. However, this had ruined his plans, and he wanted to know who had done this act. After the blonde ninja dropped the body in the river, he looked around to see a group of 4 in the distance, as they were veiled by the fog itself, making it impossible to see who they were. For some strange reason, he seemed drawn to one of them. It was almost as if he could feel the familiarity of one of the members of the group. However, the other 3 seemed to be strangers. The boy started to slowly walk to the figures, and this time the figures seemed to approach him. When he was close to the figures, he then heard the voices behind him. "Hey Naruto, where are ya going?" shouted Hana before the boy disappeared, making the others slightly tense. They still sensed him, so they weren't too afraid as he suddenly stopped moving, and his chakra hadn't had any changes in fluctuation. The boy in the heavy fog, however, was greatly surprised by the sight of the 4. He suddenly dashed forward, and wrapped a young brunette in a giant bear hug. "Hey Naru-kun," voiced the brunette. "Nei-chan," the boy whispered it very lowly as he started to sob lightly, and hug her tighter. "So this is the boy you were talking about, Ayame-chan?" asked an auburn-haired woman with a herringbone-style hairdo with several bangs falling, and crossing at her ample chest. She wore a blue combat kimono that showed off her shoulders and cleavage, which was covered by a fishnet covering underneath. "Yes, Mei-sama, this is the boy I was talking about," spoke Ayame as she rubbed the boy's head, and whispered soothing words into the boy's ear. "Well, I can see why you were interested in him. He is quite the looker," teased the young auburn ninja, causing a mild blush to form on the 2 hugging figures' cheeks. "Mei-sama, you shouldn't tease the kids," spoke a man with an eye patch over one eye, and a talisman on each ear. "Shut up or I'll kill you, Ao-san," spoke Mei with a Hanya mask appearing behind her bittersweet smile. Yes, Mei-sama," stuttered out the blue-headed man as he took several steps back. Naruto finally let go of Ayame as he stared into her chocolate-colored eyes that he just loved looking at. "So, Naru-kun, how is my dad doing?" asked Ayame with a smile on her face, just waiting to hear about Tsuki. He's not. I mean he's," huffed Naruto before he brought the board up once more. The 3rd Hokage burned the stand down with Tsuki Gigi inside, as well as some other customers, wrote the boy as the brunette in front of him went rigid, before she busted out laughing. "Wow, Naru-kun, I never took you for the joking type," spoke Ayame till she stopped, and looked at the boy's expression. He wore a face of seriousness and sadness. It can't be. yelled Ayame as tears started to burst from her eyes like water from a broken dam. Ayame sobbed, and mourned for several minutes, just crying on the younger boy's shoulder. She just let it all sink in. She would never ever see her beloved father again. Then something clicked in her mind as she suddenly stopped crying. She pulled her head back from Naruto's chest with a sad expression still on her face. Did you find, sniffle, a little, sniffle, brown-haired, sniffle girl? Asked Ayame with an expression showing that she was on the brink of breaking. Yeah, Ice Fang and me found a little girl who ran out just as the stand burnt down. Don't worry, she's fine, Ayame-chan, wrote the boy as he was enveloped in another hug as Ayame continued to thank him for saving her last piece of family she had left. Meanwhile, the boy just continued to rub her back, comforting. The other three people watching the scene felt their heart melt at the scene before them. Wow, I never knew a boy had this much care for anything in them. Too bad he's so young. If he was a little older, then I would definitely be after him. Though May, as she watched the scene before her with a slight bit of jealousy. Well, you better be going back to your village. Back in my day we never talked to other shinobi that belonged to other villages, unless it was in combat, or we were allies, spoke Ao as he started to reminisce for some strange reason. Naruto looked at the man, and stared for a few seconds with a hard glare before looking back at Ayame. Why are you with them? Wrote the boy. I was walking to Kiri to get some supplies, because our supplier didn't show up. Then I got ambushed, and these people found, and helped me ever since then, spoke the brunette with a grateful smile towards May. Okay, will I see you in Konoha again? Asterisk. Oh, you're just in luck, Naru-kun. We are heading to Konoha to talk to your Hokage, spoke the woman with a seductive voice as she crossed her arms under her chest, making it appear even bigger than before, and eliciting a blush from the blonde. I'll see you in Konoha then, wrote the boy as he walked away to his ninja team. When Naruto got back to his team, they looked at him before he gave, "We'll talk later," look before they started to walk back to Konoha with Hana, Kurenai, Kiba, Shino, Hinata, Akamaru, and Hana's dog whose name Naruto still doesn't know. Naruto walked away from Wave with thoughts clouding his mind. His mind was going over Ayame, and why she was with the Kiri-like ninja. Who killed Gato, and last, but definitely the least worrisome of all, was why the hell Tazuna named his blasted bridge after him. When he asked before they left, he merely said, in hopes that it will be as resilient as the man it was named after. The man would shout, and unfortunately it would make little to no sense to the boy who thought everyone knew how broken he was. He constantly thought everyone saw his darkness, his broken down spirit, and worst of all, through his smile. However kind fate was, it was cruel to not allow anyone to see through his smile. No one knew his smiles he would parade around with were really him hiding behind a broken door, and because no one saw through a facade he broke. He broke to the point of near silence save his close friends, and even they numbered only of 3. The young boy sighed as he straggled behind the rest of the leaping shinobi kunoichi. He slowly looked up to see Kurenai slowing down till she was step for step with Naruto. You okay, Naruto-san? Asked the woman as the boy nodded in response. You sure? I mean, you didn't even puke at the sight of the 4 headless figures. Even Shino, the unmovable stone, puked at a sight. Hell, even Hana and me cringed at the sight. Yet, you seem to loathe them for some reason, spoke the woman while staring at him. A shinobi always has secrets they keep buried, which are only discovered by 2 types of people. The most trusted to that shinobi, or the most nosy of people. Which are you? Wrote the boy as Kurenai managed to somehow read it, and not pull a George of the Jungle. The woman felt a small pang of regret in her chest as she realized his words. She wouldn't want someone prying into her past, so why would anyone else? The woman quickly looked up before nodding, and charging on ahead, not noticing Naruto switching with a shadow clone. The boy watched the fleeting figures before he turned around. The boy looked around, then threw a shuriken at a tree. The instant the throwing star hit the tree, two figures bursted from behind the tree. "Damn it, Alpha, how'd you sense us?" shouted Ice Fang. "I smelled Hana's dog behind me somehow, and it was stronger than it should be," wrote the boy as he squinted his eyes at the wolf. Asterisk. "What? You know how a mice smells?" shouted the wolf in disbelief. "Yes, rather strongly, might I add," wrote the boy as he then looked at his mother. "Hey Naruto-kun," spoke Kushina as she smiled slightly at him. "Hi mom." Asterisk. "Say Naruto-kun, whatcha been doing, Databane?" "Just guarding a lazy bridge builder." "What have you been doing?" Asterisk. "Oh, just following Ice Fang, Databane," replied the redhead cheerfully. "Was that before, or after you killed Gato?" the boy asked with a cold stare. The mere sight of his words made the woman tense up. "How'd ya know?" asked the woman as her body was still tense. "Oh, the slash marks from a sword gave me a few clues to a swordsman, but the dead giveaway was the fact that he had red painted all over him. A signature of how you executed people back during the Shinobi Wars," wrote the boy as the woman slightly relaxed, but still had her guard up for some strange reason. "You're very informed. So, whatcha gonna do now that ya know I killed him?" asked the woman cryptically as she narrowed her eyes at Naruto. What happened next surprised her greatly. She had been expecting harsh words, air writing, even a disappointed look, anything but this. The boy that called her mom had hugged her. He let go, and backed up a step, then smiled. Not one of his bull-crap smiles, but a sincere one of respect and gratitude. "I'm happy my mom is nice," wrote the boy before he hugged her once more. "Oi, Alpha, shouldn't you be trying to catch up to your team?" asked the beast as the boy's eyes widened in realization. Instantly, the boy turned, and dashed away from them in hopes to catch up to his team. The boy finally caught up with his team to see Hana missing. The boy looked around for her till he felt a hand land on his shoulder. He quickly tensed up, and looked over his shoulder to see Hana with him. "Hey Naruto-kun, how ya doin'? Say, don't you think Amai and Ice Fang have been spending a lot of time together?" asked Hana as she looked at the boy with a wide grin. Yeah, a little. Why? Asterisk. "Oh, no reason. You know, aside from her moving slower recently, eating 3 times as much, gaining several pounds quickly, and smelling a lot more like Ice Fang," spoke Hana as her happy smile turned even sweeter, too sweet for him to feel comfortable. "Is that so?" wrote the boy as they somehow continued to jump from branch to branch without slamming into a tree. "Yeah, and the funny thing is, when we took her in for an X-ray, we found something really funny. Apparently Amai is pregnant with 3 pups, and oddest of all is that Ice Fang has been around Amai, liking her constantly." "Any id," spoke Hana till Naruto finally pulled a George of the jungle. The boy grunted as he slowly pulled himself out of the indentation he made in the wood. He scowled as he heard a laughing Hana, who was still jumping from branch to branch. Then she did the same damn thing. The brunette, who now was getting extremely intimate with a tree, grunted as she peeled herself from the tree. The 2 ninjas looked at each other before they started to laugh as each other. "Wow. Didn't know Mr. Naru-kun could laugh," spoke Hana as the boy shrugged while wiping tears from his eyes, still chuckling slightly. "Well, best we catch up to the others before they suspect us." "Where's Amai?" wrote the boy as he hadn't noticed the wolf. Oh, Kiba's carrying her for me due to him saying something, rather unpleasant. It was either him carry her, or he carries me while I carry Amai. Smirked Hannah as the two started to gain onto the others, albeit slowly. By the time the two ninjas caught up to the others, they had arrived at the gate. At the gate, the guards eyed them slightly, then nodded as the group walked by them. Team 8, Hannah, and Naruto started heading to the Hokage's tower, walking this time instead of running due to them being winded slightly. As the group walked through some of the more densely populated areas, they began to notice glares sent their way. However, all of these glares were directed at Naruto, who seemed unfazed by them, as if not noticing them. The group proceeded faster than usual in these areas to escape the hateful glances, thus they arrived at the bright red tower in 15 minutes. As the group slowly started to go in, Naruto had a wicked idea. The group of ninja walked into the Hokage's office just as Naruto bursted into through an open window. He rolled in, and then sprung up standing with a peace sign for his fingers, and an ear-splitting grin on his face. The sight of which elicited sweat drops from all around except for the Hokage, who seemed reserved as if in a trance. Naruto looked around at the walls skeptically, noticing certain odd indentations in the wall, while making it look like he was admiring the beauty of the room. Shino seemed to raise an eyebrow in suspicion as the young boy looked around, while the others merely wrote it off as admiring an office he wanted one day. How was the mission? Asked the Hokage calmly as he started reading another document. We encountered several enemies, but we dealt with them fine. Unfortunately, we were unable to find out, or to eliminate the enemy. Also, on the way back, we found Gato impaled on a pole in the center of the completed bridge. Aside from that, we encountered no further problems, spoke Kurenai in her usually serious tone. A knock was heard at the door, followed by Sarutobi voicing a, "Come in." In walked a bearded Jonin, followed by 3 genin. "Hello, Hokage-sama," spoke the new Jonin who entered. The man looked at us, then his eyes focused on Kurenai, who still had her back to him. He quickly brought his gaze back to the Hokage. "Ah, Asuma, how did the mission go?" asked the Hokage, seeing the black pineapple-haired boy looking like he was about to fall asleep. "It went fine, Hokage-sama. There were no problems with the mission," spoke the Jonin now dubbed Asuma. "Good. Then give me your written report as soon as possible," spoke Sarutobi as he moved his gaze back to Kurenai. "That goes for your team as well." Dismissed. With that statement, the two teams, Hannah and Naruto, departed just as the young blonde ninja started to hear a yawn inside his head. "Hey Naru-kun, what did I miss?" asked a familiar voice inside Naruto's head. "Only a few butt kickings, and finding Aya-chan," voiced the boy in his head. "Oh, when did Ayame get a nickname, asked the red-headed vixen. I mean, forget it," thought Naruto, eliciting several laughs from Kyuubi. "Stop spacing out, Naru-kun, or else you may walk int," spoke the redhead before she could finish. However, Naruto walked straight into someone. He fell back suddenly while hearing a light laugh from in front of him. Naruto looked up to see a familiar woman with auburn hair laughing slightly before she bent down. "If you wanted to feel them, you should have just asked to Kun," spoke Mei seductively into his ear as she straightened up quickly. She looked at his face to see a large blush placed upon his visage. "That's mean, Mei-sama," shouted Ayame with a tinge of jealousy evident in her voice. "Oh, perhaps someone's jealous?" asked Mei while looking at Ayame with a smile. "I am not. I'm merely protecting my Ni-san," spoke Ayame as Naruto's heart felt slightly heavier for some reason he couldn't begin to fathom at the moment. "Oh, then you wouldn't mind if I did this, would you?" asked Mei as she suddenly shoved Naruto's head into her very ample cleavage, causing Naruto's already slightly red face to go beet red. Instantly, Ayame's face contorted in anger as she lunged at Mei, ripping Naruto from Mei's tight hug, and shoving Naruto's head into her chest, eliciting the same reaction from the young blonde. Ooh, look who's defensive of her Otudo. My, if I didn't know any better, I would have thought you were in that relationship, spoke Mei-san with a teasing grin on her face as Ayame let Naruto go, and held a bright red blush on her face. Mei-sama, I think you're a little OL. Ow. Shut up or I'll kill you, spoke Mei, suddenly interrupting Ao while she wore a bittersweet smile. Why yes, Mei-sama, spoke the man as Mei turned back to Naruto. So, I'll see you later, handsome. Mei winked at the blushing boy as she walked by him, followed by Ao, the blue-haired boy, and a slightly jealous Ayame. Naruto turned abruptly, and sprinted away as he still wore a bright red mask on his face that showed no signs of dissipating anytime soon. The boy was sprinting around the town trying to just find something to do besides train at the moment, as Kyuubi had fallen back asleep due to being tired once more. Naruto had now slowed to a walk till he saw someone with a blank white mask look around before walking through a wall. Naruto looked around curiously before he followed. The young boy walked up to the wall before putting a hand on it, and it going through the wall. Surprised by this, he walked into the wall to be greeted by a dark hallway that was eerily lit by a dull green light. Naruto looked around cautiously before descending a nearby flight of stairs. He heard faint whispers that only grew the farther down he went. Eventually he started to make out words, and stopped to listen. Has been done, Danzo-sama. Good. You have done well. 6. Spoke the man who Naruto thought was named Danzo. Yes, Danzo-sama. Do you wish for me to attempt to win the Uchiha over? Asked the person dubbed 6. No, the time is not right, yet. You will begin converting the arrogant Uchiha when the Chunin exams begin, spoke Danzo calmly. Yes, Danzo-sama. Do you wish for me to eliminate the third? Asked the 6 person. No, he has yet to lose purpose. After all, no one has noticed the seals along the walls, spoke Danzo as he seemed to gain a slight chuckle at the end. What do the seals do? That is none of your concern. I apologize, Danzo-sama. I merely wished to be informed on what they do. You know that I always wanted to learn about Fuinjutsu, spoke 6 respectively. I see no harm in informing you then. They merely allow me to hear and see what the third Hokage does, as well as allowing me to use Shisui's eye to influence him. Yes, Danzo-sama, spoke the masked man with a tone of awe and respect. You are dismissed. 6. Naruto stood there for a second till he heard a door open. Instantly, Naruto dashed up the stairs, and out of the building, sprinting through the streets. He was deep in thought of what to feel, besides the obvious, to feel anger toward the man who caused most of his pain. Danzo. Naruto now knew he had to change his plan slightly, as Sarutobi wasn't the evil one now, it was definitely Danzo. Naruto might not have known how to get back at Danzo yet, but he was planning on how, starting right now. Thus, we find the young blonde going back to the Hokage's tower. Naruto had several things planned at the moment. The first of which would be to disperse the seals in the tower, and then to place anti-seals. Naruto entered the building, and stood in front of the door that was deathly quiet. Naruto knocked, and no answer came. After several minutes, Naruto opened the door slightly to see no one present. Then Naruto realized why no one was in the room. Mei was talking to Sarutobi with the rest of the council. Which means two things. The first was he had the room for himself for at least 10 minutes if they were walking back. The second is that Danzo probably can't see him right now. Naruto walked into the room, and quickly unsealed a brush with ink, and some paper. He quickly went to work on undoing as many seals as possible. He managed to finish them all with a minute to spare as he saw the Hokage walk up to the tower. Naruto smirked as he jumped out the window onto the floor. Naruto landed just as he heard the door shut. Naruto smirked as he had done one extra thing. He had placed a seal on the Hokage's stamp that would copy onto his hand, and negate any mind control influence techniques of any form. Naruto smirked as he walked down the street away from the Hokage's tower, just as the cat Anbu appeared. Naruto, the Hokage requires your presence, stated Yugao in front of Naruto as he merely nodded in response before turning to the Hokage's tower, and walking back to it. When Naruto was in front of the Hokage's office once more he took a deep breath. Then Naruto knocked, and heard a, "Come in," stated from behind the door. Naruto walked in and saw Mei, Ayame, Ao, and Chojuro standing in front of the Hokage's desk. The parted slightly to show a new Sarutobi. This one looked slightly younger as he had lost at least 20 of his 50 wrinkles, and his eyes showed deep sorrow. Hello Naruto, Mei-san here has requested the assistance of several ninja, and I have decided you shall join a team to aid her, spoke the man with a slight amount of depression evident. Why would I lead a group? Wouldn't a Jonin or an Anbu member be better? Wrote the boy as he was slightly confused. Yes, they would, however due to events I have witnessed, and have heard I have decided that you would be crucial in assisting the rebel leader in their war, spoke the man as his voice seemed to gain a bit of apprehension. Okay, Hokage-sama, wrote the boy as the Hokage's eyes seemed to grow sadder at this. You will meet Mei-san at the gate in an hour. Please, stay behind a minute as we have some things to discuss, spoke the man as the others walked out. When the door shut the Hokage flicked his hands, and instantly 3 Anbu members left as well as some seals starting to glow. Naruto, I am deeply sorry for what I have done. I don't know why, but I did not intend to make your life a living hell. Oh, and how did you do this? The young boy asked trying to get some answers. I am very sorry for killing Tyuki and destroying the stand, I'm sorry for not defending you from the villagers, and worst of all I am extremely sorry for not being there in your times of pain. I know it won't fix anything, but please forgive me. You don't have to do it right away, but please allow me the chance to, starting from now on, spoke the old man as he had a few tears trailing down his cheeks. I have yet to forgive you, however you still have a chance to amend the mistakes made. Pray you don't make another, wrote the boy as the mood lightened slightly. Thank you Naruto, now on to the mission. I am sending you an Anko, as well as several Anbu, spoke the man as he seemed to be calm now. Why am I the only one below Jonin? Asked the boy as he narrowed his eyes slightly. I saw some of your fights, and you can definitely handle this, however I cannot increase your rank unless you complete 3 S-ranked missions, or I am present to say that you should increase in rank, therefore the council on both civilian and ninja will not allow me to make you a higher rank. Now you are dismissed, spoke Hiruzen calmly as he smiled at the boy who went out to his base to get supplies, and then meet his team. Naruto arrived at the gate to find Anko waiting with 6 other people who wore masks. The 7 people turned around to see Mei and her team approach as she looked around for the last member of her group. Hey cat, where's our last member? I hope it isn't some idiotic Jonin, stated Anko as she looked around. He's captured the heart of one of my ninja, teased Mei as Ayame's cheeks went red with embarrassment. Oh, I wonder who this Casanova is. Wondered Anko teasingly as her and Mei laughed together. Naruto walked up to the laughing group just as Anko turned to see him. Hey, Naruto-kun, whatcha doing here? Are you waiting for your team for another mission? Asked Anko as she looked around for Hana, and others. Nope. I appear to be the late one, wrote the boy, shocking Anko and most of the Anbu. Stop lying, Naruto-san. Why would a genin be put on a team for an S-ranked mission? Spoke a bear-masked man. Mei-sama, would you kindly explain it to them? Wrote Naruto with a slightly smug look on his face. Yes, Naruto-kun is on this mission as both the Hokage thought he should be on the mission, and my personal request, spoke Mei calmly as she eyed the group. No way can we send Naruto-kun into combat, he could be killed. Shouted Anko protectively. Oh, you worry about Naruto, but no one else. Perhaps you think of him more than a fellow ninja, Anko-chan. Spoke Mei teasingly, attempting to change the topic. Not a chance. I should be the one to ask if you are a Shotokan though, after all, who asks for a 12-year-old to accompany them to a war front? Spoke Anko, teasing Mei back. The Hokage did tell Naruto that he would be on this mission with you, Anko. He is on our team. Spoke Yugao, or the cat-masked Anbu, calmly as Anko and the other Anbu looked at her like she was crazy. Now that that is settled, why don't we start heading to Kiri? Spoke Mei calmly as everyone nodded, and followed her out of the village. Naruto was looking around as the group of ninja he was traveling with were jumping from branch to branch, talking amongst themselves. Naruto continued to look around, watching his back because of his guilt. He was merely guilty about forgetting to tell Ice Fang that he was leaving. Then out of nowhere Naruto saw a flash of dark colors hit him. He rolled off the tree branch down to the ground, alerting the rest of the people. At him. You're lucky the Hokage assigned us to this task. Spoke a red-headed woman who wore the mask of a dragon. Who are you? I have never seen a dragon Anbu before. Spoke the cat-masked woman with squinted eyes. I am the Hokage's person. That is all you need to know, cat. Spoke Kushina as she pulled a paper out, and handed it over to Yugao. Yugao eyed the paper carefully, then sighed. Understood, Taiko. Spoke Cat, getting wide eyes from everyone. Captain, why did you call Dragon Taiko? Asked Bear. Hokage's orders state she is in charge of this mission. Spoke Yugao calmly as she handed the paper back. Naruto, Anko, here are masks for you. Spoke Kushina as she handed Naruto his mask he wore into the village, and handed Anko a viper's mask. Naruto grinned at the sight of his mask. Let's move out, people, shouted Mei at seeing that everyone was ready. At the command of the auburn-haired woman, the ninja set off once more for Kiri. Let's set up camp for the night, spoke Mei, much to Naruto and Chojiro's appreciation. As the group started to set up tents, Mei was still looking through all of her scrolls. Damn it! Shouted Mei as she threw a scroll at a tree. What's wrong, Mei-sama? Asked Ao. I left my damn tent back at Konoha. Anyone have an extra tent? Asked Mei as she rubbed her temples. No, chorused all of the camp minus Naruto, who was holding up his white board with a very large and bold, no. Okay. Naruto, how old are you? Asked Mei as she walked up to the blonde. Old enough to kill, wrote the boy, getting a sweat drop from everyone who read it. You are not sharing a tent with Naruto-kun, spoke Anko while glaring at the woman. Then where am I supposed to sleep? Asked Mei with a frown. You could always sleep with Chojiro, spoke Kushina nonchalantly. You can't expect me to sleep with a 16-year-old, shouted Mei angrily. Why does it have to be Naruto though? Asked Yugao with a slight edge to her tone. He's young, and I won't have to worry about him giving in to his beastly desires, replied Mei as if everyone should have realized that. You know you can always sleep with a female, and besides Naruto's 13. Shouted Dragon. 12. Asterisk. Sorry 12 going on 13, and I'm more worried about you giving into beastly desires than young Naruto-kun over there. What? I would never. Replied Mei feigning innocence as she covered her mouth with one hand in fake shock. Mei-sama, if you just so happen to touch him like that at any point, spoke Ayame eerily as a Hanya mask appeared behind her, and a knife in her right hand. See, calm down Ayame-chan. I was just joking. Just for that joke you will now be sleeping in my tent with me, spoke Ayame as she dragged the rebel leader who was whining and pouting. The Anbu who watched this entire thing were laughing their off at the scene of the almighty rebel leader being reduced to a child. After that little event, the group went to sleep with everyone taking a 1-hour shift of watching the camp. Night passed rather uneventfully, and the sun rose an hour before the ninja who were now sprinting across the ocean. The next day was rather uneventful except for the woos from owls in the night that were accompanied by the occasional howl. The group had traveled by foot on the water that day, and made camp on a nearby island. That day they woke at the island that was a few hundred meters away from Kiri, and all they saw was mist. This immediately put them on edge as they knew it carried some fog, but it was never this heavy, unless there was a fight going on. Ice Fang started to rapidly sniff the air to see if their theory was correct, and it was. Hey Alpha, there's a fight going on. Let's go, I wanna kill some little shits, spoke the dog, getting deadpan looks from people still not believing that a dog could have such a foul mouth. It's up to you Mei-sama, spoke Kushina calmly as she eyed the fog that would light up colors of blue, purple, or orange every so often. Let's go, I want to see how effective your team is, Dragon. Yes, Cat, your team is to proceed first while my team provides support, spoke Dragon with authority. You heard Taiko, let's go, spoke Yugao. Her team started to sprint across the water. When Naruto finally broke through the fog into the fight, he stopped along with the rest of the team. The reason why is that they were watching a fight between 10 ninja, 8 on Kiri's side and 2 on the rebels. However, what made their blood boil was that Kumo was here, and helping Kiri defeat the rebels. Bear and I will ambush the loyalists while Viper provides support. Wolf, you will watch for stragglers, and clean up the mess. Go, spoke Cat softly as the team started to execute the orders. Yugao drew her sword as she appeared behind one of the ninjas and cut him from behind, instantly killing the man. Bear flashed through hand signs before shouting, "Fire style, great fireball jutsu." Instantly, a great ball of fire emerged from the trees, and engulfed 3 ninja who were unaware. The first ninja, one who wore Kumo's headband, charged Yugao with a katana of his own. As he swung down, Yugao dodged right, allowing 3 kunai behind her to find a new home in the man's neck. Viper smiled as she saw that blood was pouring out of his neck and mouth as he writhed in agony before dying. Naruto watched as his team killed 5 when the other 3 turned to run. Instantly, Naruto went into action as he shushined across the field unnoticed before giving chase. Naruto smirked under his mask before it dropped into a frown when he saw the 3 were fighting Ice Fang. Come at me, you little shits. See if you can take me down, shouted the wolf as he dodged a kunai before lunging, and landing on a Kiri ninja. Ice Fang quickly overpowered the man, and mauled his mercilessly, making the other 2 back away in fear. Wind style. Ancient gale, a voice whispered that was heard by everyone nearby. The whisper was quickly followed by a light breeze that steadily built up before a dragon of wind appeared, and engulfed one ninja. The ninja who was caught in the maw of the dragon instantly turned into an explosion of blood before the jutsu dispelled. The final ninja backed up in extreme fear as a small puddle could be seen underneath him. Jutsu from behind us, spoke Ice Fang as he eyed the smelly substance in front of him. Just as Ice Fang finished speaking, however, 3 Senbon embedded themselves in the Kiri man's neck, rendering him unconscious. He will crack rather quickly. Hopefully he has a little information to help us, spoke Mei from behind the downed man as Chojuro walked up to the man who smelled like piss, and grabbed his collar and dragged him, trying his best not to touch the man any more than needed. Didn't think those Kumo bastards would support Kiri though, spoke Falcon with disgust as he kicked a dead Kumo nin. Probably just to attain more bloodlines, spoke Bear as he walked towards the main group. Mei quickly looked over the unconscious ninja before she saw some papers hanging out of the pocket of his vest. She walked over to the man, and quickly grabbed the paper and read over them. Instantly her stern face turned into a gleeful grin. These poor saps were commissioned to aid Kiri, and were to arrive today, meaning they are currently on time. She looked over the files once more before scowling. What's wrong, Mei-sama? Asked Ayame calmly. The group sent to aid Kiri only has a resemblance to one ninja here, or at the rebel base. Heck, take away a few things, and they could be twins, spoke Mei while still scowling. Who resembles a ninja that died today, Mei-sama? Asked Chojuro meekly as everyone nodded. Naruto, turn around. We need to apply some contacts to you. No, we are not sending Naruto alone, spoke Yugao and Viper in tandem, making both look at each other before giggling slightly. It's either send him alone, or we lose a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and as per orders I get to assign you to the missions I need done. Naruto, take off your mask, and put these in. Naruto merely nodded, much to everyone's shock, as he removed his mask, and put the contacts in. What is my backstory, Mei-sama, and I don't think I can do this as my speaking problem, wrote the young boy. In the file, the boy who you are impersonating is just like you, however he does talk, quite a bit. It says that he wears black lines much like yours on each cheek to signify how many years he has served, and he's up to 3. Your personalities seem similar. So all you need to do is talk, and can easily pass as one of the Kumo nin. Here, follow the directions, and good luck, spoke Mei with finality as she handed Naruto a Kumo forehead protector and the orders. The Konoha Anbu were furious, however they had no choice to obey, or be tried for treason. Will do, Mei-sama, spoke Naruto, earning a gasp from the ninja at his deep voice. Mei had a little blush on her face due to his voice seeming to be music to her ears. Naruto quickly looked at the orders before turning, and sprinting off into the distance. So, help me, if Naruto is killed, the price will come out of your hide, Mei-sama. Kushina spoke Mei's honorific with an edge as she glared at the woman. He should be able to handle himself according to Ayame, spoke Mei without a care in the world. However, inside she was slightly concerned for the blonde, as he had grew on her from Ayame's dozens of stories about the blonde. Mei sighed quietly before the group resumed the course to the rebel base to resupply. Naruto was sprinting on the ground as he didn't want to go from branch to branch due to the thick fog around him. I'm not happy about this, Naru-kun, spoke Kyuubi within Naruto's head. I know, Q-chan, but it's part of my mission. If it helps gain the trust of Mei, then I have one extra person supporting me in my plan. I know, and when you guys come out on top you will have a village backing you, but I just have a bad feeling about all this. You worry too much, Q-chan, and it doesn't complement your beauty to have an expression other than one of happiness, spoke Naruto, eliciting a deep blush and a bright smile from the nine-tailed fox. Pay attention. 300 yards to the right, one patrol, 700 yards behind them is a large camp, spoke Kyuubi in a serious voice. Yes, Q-chan. See you when I check in, spoke Naruto as he cut the mental link. Halt. State your name, intruder, spoke Akumo Jonin with a very big build of muscle, like serious muscle builder status. My name is Kaminari, AN. Thunder, rank Chunin. Reporting into camp, spoke Naruto as he straightened up. The man who asked for Naruto's name opened his eyes in surprise as he quickly descended to Naruto, and stood in front of him. Where is the rest of your squad? Asked the man as he started to grow suspicious. We were ambushed on our way here by the rebel leader. I barely made it out alive due to the squad leader telling me to report back to you immediately. Here are my papers, sir, spoke Naruto in a very soldier-type style. The man quickly looked over the papers, and sighed deeply. Damn, you are cleared of suspicion, Kaminari. Follow me back to base to give a full report. Yes, spoke Naruto as they began leaping into a very fortified citadel that resembled a village, albeit much smaller, and instead of buildings it had tents. The large man led Naruto into the camp, and straight to a bright blue and white command tent. Darui-sama, B-sama, and Yugito-sama, young Kaminari has arrived alone, spoke the man. Okay, bring him in, and then you are dismissed for the day. D-san, cause Kumo has A, B, and C, so why not D? Spoke the man in the center who had darker skin, and white hair covering one eye in a very relaxed tone of voice. Hi, spoke D quickly as he walked out briskly. Kaminari reporting in, spoke Naruto as he stood at attention. Give us the report, Kaminari, spoke the blonde-haired woman. When we first made land at 8 a.m. this morning, we met with the border patrol in the middle of a skirmish with the rebels. We managed to bring their strong 16 down to 2, and then we were pushed back by the appearance of Chojuro, Ao, and the rebel leader Mei. Due to quickly being overwhelmed by their jutsu, the squad leader ordered me to report to you with the information, spoke Naruto in an emotionless voice as he stood rigid. Damn those rebels. Good work, Kaminari. Report back in 1 hour to get your new assignment, spoke man with white hair covering one eye. Go out, before we blow your doubts, bout our wicked shouts. Sorry, I am very bad at rhyming, so I am trying my hardest, rapped the blonde-haired man, eliciting sweat drops from everyone in the tent. Naruto decided to drop it, and turned away to set up his tent while debating over his next move.